Which of the following is a step in the portfolio management process? Study current financial, develop a policy statement, construct the portfolio, study current financial and economic condition. All of the above. Which of the following is requirement for granting the certificate for registration under PMS? The applicant has the necessary infrastructure like adequate office space, equipment, manpower to be discharged in the activity of the portfolio manager. The applicant is a body corporate. The applicant has appointed a compliance officer. All of the above are requirements for granting the certificate for registration under PMS. Which of the following person entities can invest in PMS? HUF, individual, all of the above. All of the above can invest. The following person entities can invest in PMS: individual, non-resident individual, Hindu and family, proprietorship firm, association of persons, partnership, limited, trust, body, corporate. Typical putability futures of a bond gives the holder the right under certain system to sell the bond back to the issuer. Gives the bondholder the option to convert the bond into another security, typically the common stock of the firm issuing the convertible bonds. Allows the issuing firms to retire the bond before the maturity by paying a prescribed price. Allows the investor to redeem the bond. Gives the holder a put provision gives the bondholder right to sell the bond back to the issuer at a predetermined price on a specified dates. Bonds are beneficiaries of the bondholder by granting a pre-specified selling price at the redemption date. Government securities carries practically no risk and hence are called risk-free or gilt-edged instrument. Practically no risk, liquidity, tradability, negotiable, डिफ़ॉल्ट का तो होगा नहीं, लिक्विडिटी का भी नहीं है, negotiability and hence are called risk-free. GSECs government securities carries practically no risk of default as they are granted by the government of the country and hence are called risk-free gilt-edged instrument. Ratio compares the price of the stock to the earnings generates. The most common stock valuation measures used by analysts is the price to earnings ratio. Was inserted in the Income Tax Act 1961 to provide a safe harbor to overseas fund availing fund management services from India-based managers. Okay. Overseas fund availing fund management services from India-based managers. Section 11. In the Union Budget 2015-16, the Finance Minister announced amendments in the Income Tax Act 1961. These changes were aimed at developing and promoting fund management industry in India. Section 99A was inserted in the Income Tax Act 1961 to provide a safe harbor to overseas fund availing fund management services from India-based manager, provided the fund and the manager comply with the requirements as specified in the section. Section 9A of the Income Tax Act 1961 provides that in case an eligible investment fund established or incorporated or registered outside India collects funds from its members and invest in India, then such fund shall not be deemed to have a business connection, nor will be regarded as resident in India just because fund management activity is carried out through a eligible fund manager located in India. Under relative valuation techniques, value of a stock is estimated based on its current price relative to variable considered to be significant, such as based upon its current price relative to variables considered to be significant in valuation, such as cash flow. Under valuation technique, value of stock estimated based upon the current price value, cash flow, book value, earning. All of the above. Relative valuation is conducted by identifying comparable firms and then obtaining market values of equity of this firm. These values are then converted into standardized values, which are in forms of multiple respect to one source and metric of the company's financials, such as earning, cash flow, book value, or sales, then applied to the respective financial of the target company of valuation. In India, the central government issued dated securities, treasury bills, central government issued both treasury bill and bonds or dated securities, while the state government issued only bonds. The ownership in a company that entitles its holder to participate in its profit and the right to vote on the company's affairs, equity share, commercial papers, bonds, equity shares. Ownership in a company that its holder a share in profits and the right to vote on the company's affairs, equity shareholders are residual owners of firms. Profit after other contractual claims on the firm are satisfied and have the ultimate control over how the firm is operated. Equity shareholders are residual owner. Investment in equity shares rewarded investor into dividend and capital appreciation. Which of these expenses can be included under operating expenses? Courier, audit fee, which of those expenses can be included under operating expenses? Brokerage charges, fee for portfolio management services, courier charges. Operating expenses that can be charged to PMS charges in connection with the day-to-day operation, like courier expenses, stamp duty, document franking charges, notary service tax, other securities levies, postal and telephone expenses, opening of bank, trading and demat accounts, and any other out-of-pocket expenses incurred by the portfolio manager on behalf of the clients. Which of these documents is mandatory for investment in PMS as per SEBI regulation? Process also requires a regulation plan to PMS. Which of these risks are not related to the risk factors that are to be revealed as part of the disclosure document given to the client? The risk which of these risks are not related to the risk factors that are to be revealed as part of the disclosure document given to the client. The risk arising due to the investment approach of PMS, the business risk of the group companies of the PMS, the risk arising due to non-diversification of market are not related to the risk factors that are to be revealed as part of the disclosure document. The business risk of the group companies, the disclosure document contains details with respect to risk arising from the investment approach, investment objectivity, strategy, asset allocation, amount of non-diversification, if any. A statement of to the effect that securities and investment are subject to market risk. Which of these risks are not related to the risk factor that are to be removed? Mr. Karan is an investor and he has a good amount of surplus in his saving bank account. What can you make out of from this statement? Mr. Karan is an investor and he has a good amount of surplus in his saving bank account. It may be a saving future expenses. Simply the difference between money and the money in the saving account is it cannot be called an investment as investment process of making the investment. How is the net worth of an individual investor calculated? Financial liability, tangible liability, all assets minus current liability. All assets minus net worth all assets in the investor own, that is the house, cars, investment bond, mutual funds, saving accounts, estimate and market. Then all the liabilities need to be subtracted from assets. What is the fixed amount that is paid at regular interval till the maturity of bond known as coupon, principal, interest, installment? What is the fixed amount that is paid at regular intervals till the maturity of bond known as coupon? Bond create a fixed financial obligation on the issuer, so they are referred as fixed income securities. The issuer of bond agrees to pay fixed amount of interest, repay the fixed amount of principal at the date of maturity. Who appoints the compliance officer in PMS? The portfolio manager, SEBI, in consultation. As per SEBI, every portfolio shall appoint a compliance officer who shall be responsible for monitoring the compliance of the Act, rules and regulation, notification, guidelines, instructions, etc. issued by SEBI or the central government and for redressal of investor grievance. The compliance officer shall immediately and independently report to the SEBI any non-compliance is one of the statutory costs to the investor while engaging PMS registration, legal charges, notice charges. None of the statutory cost to the investor while engaging PMS. Registration charges means any charges imposed by state or federal government. Notary fees are payable by the notary public. Start to get a authorization. While doing the due diligence for selecting a portfolio manager, an investor should be careful and not fall these traps. If a portfolio manager is continuously beating the benchmark, then this is the adequate indicators of the investment strategy. While doing due diligence or selecting a portfolio manager, an investor should be careful and not fall in which of these traps. If a portfolio manager is continuously beating the benchmark, then this is an adequate indicator of the investment strategy. The best indicator of a portfolio manager's future performance is the past performance. If a portfolio manager is continuously beating the benchmark, then this is an adequate indicator of the investment strategy. Past performance or beating the benchmark should not be the only criteria selecting a portfolio manager, as a complex process. It involves analyzing a lot more than just returns. Investors are expected to carry out A detailed due diligence process before selecting their portfolio management. Due diligence involves the quantitative, qualitative analysis of the portfolio manager reputation, key personal and operations. Investors should understand the investment process, investment strategy, investing style to appreciate how the investment returns are generated and gauge the likelihood of the performance persisting in future for the given investment process. Portfolio managers can be evaluated on the basis of their investment philosophy, investment approach, investment process, strategy, style, and past performance compared against a benchmark or managers universe. Which among these is not a valid classification of a portfolio management services provider? Commodity, forex, equity, fixed income, PMS. Which among these is not a valid classification of portfolio management services? Forex. Portfolio management services can be classified on the basis of product classes such as equity, fixed income, commodity, mutual fund, units, multi-asset invest. Mr. Seema is a eligible fund manager and she has a disagreement with an overseas fund regarding parking of investable fund. According to the overseas fund, they are not allowed to park their funds in Indian commercial bank. Can you guide them? The overseas fund is allowed to park their funds in Indian commercial bank with the permission from SEBI. The overseas fund is not allowed to park the fund in Indian commercial bank as per general guidelines. So the overseas fund is allowed to park their funds in Indian commercial bank. However, they would be deemed to have a business connection with India in the section. The overseas fund is allowed to park their fund in Indian commercial if they do not want to invest in Indian market. The overseas fund is allowed to park their investment in commercial bank if they do not want to invest in Indian market. Okay. As per SEBI, PMS regulation, obligation and responsibility of eligible fund manager and individual fund manager shall be required to keep the funds of eligible investment fund in a schedule. Commercial banks provide the requirement of compliance with this sub-regulation would not arises in case eligible investment fund does not as per Chapter 5 of SEBI Intermediaries Regulation 2008, the period of which portfolio manager would be prohibited from taking any new assignment. Chapter 5 of SEBI Intermediaries Regulation, the period for which a portfolio manager would be prohibited from taking any assignment. 5 years. Specified as well take up any new assignment or contract launch a new scheme program. On what does the risk and return of a portfolio depend upon? It depends upon the covariance of return of each pair of securities in the portfolio, depend upon the proportion of investment in each constituent securities. The return from the portfolio and its risk depend on various factors: the proportion of investment, various securities, and the covariance of return on each pair are two important factors. Covariance statistic. What type of action can be taken by SEBI in case of default by a portfolio manager? It can prohibit the portfolio manager from launching a new scheme. It can issue a warning to the portfolio manager. It can suspend the certificate of registration of the portfolio manager. What type of action can be taken by SEBI in case of default by a portfolio manager? It can prohibit the portfolio manager from launching a new scheme. It can issue a warning to the portfolio manager. It can suspend the certificate of registration registration of the portfolio manager. I think अरे the portfolio manager who contravene any of the provision of the SEBI Act rules or regulations shall be liable, including the action under Chapter 5 of SEBI. And securities change regulation include the following action: suspension of certification of registration for a specified period, cancellation of certification of registration, prohibiting the portfolio manager to take up any new assignment or contract or launch any scheme for the period specified in order, debarring a principal officer of the portfolio manager from being employed or associated with any registered intermediary or other registered person for the period specified in order, debarring a branch or any office of the portfolio from carrying out activities for the specified period. 6. Warning the portfolio manager. A client has suffered a loss which is greater than the value of assets with a PMS. How is the client protected in such a case? In case of non-discretionary portfolio manager, the client will be completely protected. If the agreement contains a limited liability clause, then the client is protected. In case of discretionary portfolio manager, how is the client protected in such a case? If the agreement contains a limit liability clause, then the client is protected. In case of discretionary portfolio, the agreement between the portfolio manager and the client includes various clauses, and one of them is, in case of discretionary portfolio manager, condition that the liability of a client shall not exceed his investment with the portfolio manager. The discretionary portfolio manager individually and independently manages the fund of each investor, whereas the non-discretionary manager manages the fund in accordance with the direction of the investor. When will the portfolio manager appoint a custodian? When it's offering fund management services to foreign portfolio investor, when it is offering advisory service to domestic, when it's offering advisory service to foreign portfolio investor. When will the portfolio manager appoint a custodian? Offering advisory services to domestic investors, foreign investor, foreign portfolio investor. When a portfolio manager is providing only advisory services, it will not appoint a custodian. When it is providing fund management services to domestic or foreign clients, it has to appoint a custodian. The assets allocation decision explains the significant percentage of variability of broadly diversified portfolios, a larger percentage of variation in single fund returns. The asset allocation decision explains a significant percentage of variability of broadly diversified portfolios, a larger percentage of variation in single fund returns. As per the finding by the Boston Rogers and Paul Kaplan, suggesting that the portfolio investment policy is an important contributor to return variability. It crosses all portfolios. Assets allocation decision explain an average of 40% of the variation in fund returns per single fund. Asset allocation explain 90% of the fund returns slow down. Which type of equity can be offered to investor in the accumulation phases? Which type of equity can be offered to investor in the accumulation phase? Accumulation phase. Equity will be one. Which type of equity can be offered to investor in the accumulation phase? Zero beta equity, low beta equity, high beta equity, equity with beta is 1. Yeah, accumulation होगा तो equity with beta, high beta equity. Accumulation phase. In this phase, the individual has a very long-term horizon and potentially growing income stream, so he can undertake more high return, high risk capital gain oriented investment. Therefore, the investor can invest in high beta equity. Beta relates to the return of a stock or a portfolio to the return on market index. It reflects the sensitivity of the fund's returns to the fluctuation in the market index. A beta that is greater than 1 means that the portfolio or stock is more volatile than the benchmark index, while a beta of less than 1 means the security is less volatile than the index. What type of a strategy is a company following if it is positioning itself as an unique one in the industry? What type of strategy is company following if it is positioning itself as a unique one in the industry? Differentiation, duration, cost leadership, black swan. Differentiation, blue ocean, cost leadership. What type of a strategy is a company